Hello. Oops, I might have sent out a wrong link. Is it? Correct. Hello. Hello. Hello, Colleen. Yep. Thank you. You are on, and I guess Shangao, you are also here.
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Morning. Let me. Wow, nice background there, Sangha.
Yeah, just switching virtual background every week to different places.
Nice one. Okay, let's give people a couple more minutes. Okay, I guess we can potentially get started. Sorry, I had a wrong link in the email. Apparently, I copy pasted my next meeting link. It happens. So some people might be in the wrong Zoom room. So I think Becky is sending out a correction. So apologies if that caused you any issues. So I think today we have 3 topics to be covered. First, I think we have a presentation from Songao that was supposed to be done last week. We'll have it today, and followed by oops, getting a feedback. Okay, followed by a presentation from Colleen. And finally, I think we'll have a quick presentation from Xiaohua on the geospatial libraries. Any questions before we get started? And hopefully this time I want to, we don't have a very packed agenda so that we have time for discussion. So anything we have questions from last week or whatever, like about the Cybergis X platform, so all are welcome. So hopefully we'll get some time for discussion. Sangao, I think you should be able to share your screen or take over however you want to. Wonderful.
Okay, yeah.
I can see.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Anand. And good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. And it's my great pleasure to present some of the earlier work we have been doing about understanding and mapping the multi-scale human mobility patterns, and also the utilize human mobility flows into the geospatial modeling of COVID-19 spread. I hope that my presentation can also stimulate some of our ongoing collaborative efforts with other fellows. And so as we know that location data is very important to understand the geospatial spread of their infectious disease. And in this case, COVID-19, I think that what we have observed is actually, we call the open data spring up during the COVID-19. So, some of those data sources which we may not observe before is actually they're coming up and support the research, especially those location data for social good. And for us, we did partnerships with different mobile phone providers, in addition to the open data sources such as Google Mobility, Apple Mobility, and other providers. So for instance, one of the primary data source we use from SafeGraph, and they have a tracking using over 25 million mobile phone users as a daily basis, and to look at the like a point of interest level at different businesses about the foot traffic based on the how human visit those places. And we can also look at the stay-at-home ratio nationwide, how people change their stay-at-home behavior based on the risk perception or the stay-at-home order. And talking about individual level data, and many of you may read the story about the South Dakota rally and about how that event may impose some of the nationwide spread. It's still ongoing. I just saw several preprint articles about this potential event, but from the mobility side, we can see that based on such a individual level data, and we can actually to look at how the trajectories, at those super gathering events, how that may affect the further spread of COVID-19. And for this data, it's also on Amazon, the S3 bucket, and we for daily access and then updates, it occupy about 160 gigabytes daily stream, and with over 200 files per day. So it's actually a ginormous data set. As I said, because we work with different data providers, and we need to build a workflow and to do the regular data accumulation, the updates, and then further derive those meaningful mobility index for their policymakers or for their other researchers. So this is why we try different approaches. One of the, I think, most appealing approach might be using a lot of our fellows also using the web interface-based dashboard. So which means that we can visualize and to see the mobility changes at different geographic scales. And this is one of our work we did earlier in April. We can look at how the mobility change across the nation by looking at the county level travel distance changes, and the red color in the county show that is a higher mobility value than the normal before pandemic, and where the dark blue means that the reduced mobility pattern compared with the normal. And yeah, we keep updates this mobility index in our website, and we also did some explanatory analysis about the potential association between the mobility changes with the change rate of the COVID-19 cases. As you expected, with the more severity of the COVID-19 one county, there is associated reduced mobility patterns and also increased stay-at-home time also they are statistically significant. And if we look at the doubling time, which means that the time or the days that taken to double the COVID-19 cases before and after the stay-at-home order, we look at a statewide specific and also do both empirical analysis and the modeling analysis. And we do find that the doubling time, changed significantly after the stay-at-home orders, which means that actually the policy indeed works in most states at that in April. So this is our work was also reported by CAN Health. And after that, another approach, as I said, in addition to our dashboard, we also make our multi-scale mobility origin to destination flow data openly accessible on GitHub. And we have been received a lot of requests from different researchers and organizations to access this data and to clear up some questions regarding the data, because data is there, but they may have some inquiries about the specific process. And you can see that here, this is a, we are modeling the county level. This is the first level. And about before the pandemic and during the pandemic and after, also after the stay-at-home orders, and you can see the, the flow changes across the nation. And you can also look at the temporal patterns. And we also have the sensor track to track data as well, but this is much larger. So per day you have over 1 gigabyte data. So this is why we split into different files on GitHub. And we also support the script to help you to merge the data from different files per day. So this is the data set. Yeah, if you think this data might be helpful for your study, such as food accessibility or understanding the human flow between different places, you might check out or talk with me. And talking some details about the estimation, because our goal is to estimate the population level flow, because as we found in the modeling approach later mentioned, this is very important because as we know, most of the data source only account for about 10% of the entire population. So we need some way to do the data exportation. And so what we did is 3 approaches. The first approach is based on the ratio between the population and then the number of devices in one geographic unit, depending on its sensor tract county or state, and we can further extrapolate the the flow. This is already observed based on the mobile phone tracking data, and this is what we extrapolate. And this is the first approach. And because we did a long time for the human mobility studies, we also compare with 2 well-known mobility models. The first one is gravity model. The second one is a radiation model. The key difference for the 2 models are 2 aspects. First one, the gravity model is a bidirectional, which means that there is no direction in the gravity model. It's only consider the attractiveness was a node attraction, that's the population, and then the distance decay, that is in the denominator, to consider the 2 effects. For the radiation model, is a directional model, so which means that we model the spatial interaction with a directed network model, and we do both. And as you expected, because the observer mobile phone tracking flow is a directed network flow, so you expect there is a higher correlation between the radiation model and the observed empirical flow. So, another aspect for the radiation, the gravity model, is that the radiation is a kind of non-parametric, and the gravity model is a parametric, which means that we have to do the parameter tuning for the K and then the distance decay coefficient. And this is why I can see that in different weeks or different days, you may also have a different parameter settings. And with the mobility data, we did two modeling. One is at the state level. Also work with another fellow, Professor Xun Shi from Dartmouth University. And we evaluate different non-pharmaceutical intervention measures. How does that impact the geographic spread of the COVID-19? And one of the, we think one of the novel thing we did in this model is we modified the traditional SER model by considering the human mobility flows as a dynamic system rather than a closed, homogeneous, epidemic model. Similarly, we did also in our county work with our local Department of Health Services and other hospital officials, and we this is our medicine area, the Ding County, and this is the model we call the mobility augmented SER model, and this is a classic compartment model. Consider the susceptible, exposed, infected, and removed persons into different groups, and utilize the ordinary differential equation and solve these system equations, and we can find the projection of the spread. And last slide, back into the mobility. So at the local level, the university decision makers and also the local health officials and the communities, we hold a weekly meeting as well, and we look at the current situation and look at the the testing dashboard, the mobility dashboard, the COVID-19 case dashboard. A lot of collaboration efforts going on at the UW Medicine. And here, the mobility dashboard, we are looking at 3 indices that derive from the mobile phone data I mentioned earlier. The orange one shows the close contacts, means that the main contact person in a sensor tract and change over time. So we look at for every 2 mobile phones, and if they are within 5 minutes and or within 50 meters, and because of the GPS uncertainty, and we look at how close, right, 2 devices are, and to give an index. And the purple and the green one previously mentioned the stay at home time, and then the travel distance. So we look at particularly these 3 mobility indices. Yeah, so just to wrap up, so we think that mobile phone can help track the mobility patterns and also can be used for digital contact tracing. So this is another issue I think some of our fellows may talk in future. Second, the mobile phone sensor have the different positional accuracy, and we need also privacy consideration in the whole data accumulation analysis and then the data sharing. And based on the analysis and modeling, we do find the health and social disparities, and which requires more attention, such as the testing site allocation. And we need definitely a lot of coordination efforts and then multidisciplinary collaboration. Yeah, that's all for my presentation. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Song. That was wonderful. Questions for Songa? There is one in the chat. One in the chat saying, how do you overcome privacy consideration when accessing the data?
Yes, so there are 2 aspects. First of all, as you can see, we work with both individual data and then the aggregate data. For the individual level data, we take actual protocols for the data accessibility and also the data sharing. So we can only work on the university allocated the secure server. So this is one, and then another is we actually also when we look at a particular users or there's some echo maybe. So when we look at particular user, we do not know that user information, such as the demographic information. So we only know the location and the timestamp. So which means that for us, it's more about how to compute the aggregate in the index rather than tracking the individuals. So I think that also maybe from the usage perspective. Yeah, but yeah, we do the several round of like university IRB and also the secure server protocol issue. Yeah, that's same to our other collaborators on campus dealing with like genomic sequencing data and then the testing data because linking to the students and the faculty and staff. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
I guess, yeah, sure. I think there were a couple who had raised there. Ruby, I think we hear you, but your voice is not clear at all. You're just, nope. Nope.
Maybe typing.
Yeah, you can, maybe you can type the question, I guess.
Sorry.
I think there is one more question in chat, Song. You can.
Okay.
Yeah, Ruby, you might have to reconnect your audio.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, maybe before we hand over to the second one, I think Sean mentioned the mobility flow. As I shared, our GitHub contains 3 levels: the state to state, and the county to county, and also the sensor tract to sensor tract. So there are 3 geography scales. So I think several what a request we receive is, for instance, from some health department, they are only interested in like Southern California or in a certain region. Then we didn't, because we provide the whole US data. If you work on the more local scale, you have to clip the data by yourself. But yeah, I think we can also maybe pre-write some scripts to support that. But our data is the national scale. This is why I said the sensor tract level daily size is over 1 gigabyte. Yeah.
Thank you. I think Jingwu Park also has raised his hand. So maybe Jingwu, you can have a first question.
Oh yeah, thank you. So this is Jinu Park from Texas A&M University, and I'm working with Dr. Dan Goldberg. So we are working on measuring spatial accessibility in Houston area for the hospitals. And we are trying to integrate the uncertainties when measuring accessibility. So what I mean is that the number of the beds in the hospital is uncertain. And at the same time, from the demand location to the supply location, the travel time is also uncertain. But we are having problem getting some high resolution data from A to B, the travel time data. So does your data set cover those things as well?
Thank you, Jingwu. Yeah, short answer, we didn't process that, but that's possible to, to derive that from the individual trajectory. But I think because I also work on another project about the travel time, so my suggestion is you may consider the Google Maps API, which provide you the real-time traffic information, and then you give a OD pair, you will get the estimated travel time based on an hour of a day and a day of a week. So we found that it's actually very reliable. So we do use that Google Maps API to do the travel time estimation in another project.
So the problem we are suffering is, yeah, I look into the Google API, and the problem is really expensive. So the estimation costs like $1 million, because the Greater Houston is kind of big, and we divided that area into like hexagon, like 1 mile hexagon. It's like 30,000 hexagons. So 30,000 multiple 30,000 is just exponential. And
I see. Yeah, thank you. Maybe because of time, I think I'm happy to maybe have a conversation with your team.
Yeah.
I think I have some potential solution or maybe thoughts we can discuss further. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's great. Yeah. So other thing, I think there were, I think there is last two questions. One is in the chat from Andrew. I think, how far does the data go? I'm just paraphrasing. How far does the data go? Far back, so that you can get some historical record before and after kind of COVID hit.
Oh yeah, so right now we updated from March 1st, but we have a plan to back up, like to January 1st or even longer, but we keep going. Yes, we'll update regularly. Yeah.
Good. And Suhan, you had a question?
Yes. Awesome. Thank you for the nice presentation. I have a question about the maps, your maps that shows the percentage of the change of mobility stuff. Yes. Could you share how you computed the percentage of change of mobility? So did you use the mobile phone data to do it?
Oh yeah, the change in mobility is a very simple metric. So let's say you have a daily measure, no matter is a home dwell time or the travel distance, and then you just do the ratio, right? Compare with that on February, and then you get a ratio, and then you use a ratio -1 and times 100%. You will get the percentage.
Okay.
Thank you. I think that's all the time we have. If you have more questions, you can post it in chat, and somehow might take some time to respond if that's possible. Or you can, of course, reach out to Songhao personally via email and other mechanisms. So thank you, Song.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll switch gear. We'll go to the next presentation. I think that's Colleen.
Yeah, that's me. Let me share my screen.
I think and it's a good segue also of considering the ethics of doing such a thing. So
can you all see
yes.
the screen?
Yep.
You see the presentation, right?
We see the presenter as well as the presenter view, both of them. I guess the presenter view is coming first now.
Yeah, you can see both. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we just see your presentation.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Colleen. I've introduced myself last week already. I'm a researcher at the AAG, at the American Association of Geographers. And today I want to spark a conversation about geoethics. The conversation doesn't have to end after this presentation or after this meeting. And also I gotta say, I'm no expert on ethics, but I am simply there to provide you some thoughts and conversations I have been part of in the past and that I thought would be of interest to this community and for the conceptualization of the Geospatial Software Institute. You're right, Anand, this presentation from Songhao was a great primer for this conversation. He received questions about ethics, what about the privacy of the data, and then how to access very expensive private data, such as the data that Google is producing. There are very few answers to a lot of these questions yet. I'm sure a lot of you in academia receive a lot more questions now about ethics, how to access private data, but maybe with very few answers that you can find. So this is what I'll talk about for about 10 to 15 minutes. What is ethics, AAG, and geoethics, and then academic and private geospatial data and the convergence that is happening between the two sectors in terms of collection and use. The GSI and its goals related to ethics, and then a call for you all to join or spearhead any activities in that area. So first, what is ethics? Just we are all on the same page on what that means. Fairly simple. The simplest definition is that ethics is simply a set of moral principles. These principles are defined by a community and also hopefully practiced by that community, not just defined, but also practiced. So now I'll give you some overview of what AG is thinking in terms of geoethics. This conversation fits within the 3-year strategic plan of the AAG. The development of this new strategic plan from 2020 to 2022. That conversation started about a year ago, and the final plan was approved by Council in April of this year. So it's a very fresh plan. And it identifies 10 strategic goals we want to prioritize and show visible progress towards by the end of 2022. I'll share a link to the strategic plan in the chat later on. But so importantly, among these 10 goals, one of them is for AAG to formalize geoethics. Specifically, we want to facilitate conversations about ethics in geography. We don't want to just have the conversations for the sake of having them. We also want to build on our role as an association to convene between academics, policymakers, industry, and professional and government agencies to reach an audience that also goes beyond our own academic members, and in some cases even reach broad and general audiences. These conversations on ethics are not new. Critical discussions around GIS ethics started in the 1990s, early 1990s, which initiated the development of the GIS Code of Conduct, or the GIS Code of Ethics. It was first adopted by EURISA, an association, in 2003, and it became the Code of Conduct of the GIS Certification Institute and for GIS professionals, and also prompted ethics to be added as topics to the UCGIS GIS&T body of knowledge. At the time, though, late 1990s, early 2000s, at that time, geography departments were still an important pathway to get preparation for the geospatial services industry, and students were also exposed to critical geography and spatial thinking. But since then, the GIS degree and certification field went through many changes driven by growing demands for GIS skills. There's also a growing demand in terms of skills that would be more associated with a computer science degree, such as software development or leveraging computing resources, just like Song Gao just shared with us. But these newer training opportunities to fit those new needs don't usually come accompanied with training in geography, GIS ethics, or spatial thinking. So the conversation around ethics continues, and it continues to take on new forms. There is a new wave of attention due to the unraveling of some concerning new stories about deceiving practices around personal geospatial data, real concerns with geoprivacy, and newer concerns with artificial intelligence. So again, these conversations are not new. Also, each year, our members at the AAG organize sessions or present papers around ethical issues. And a few years ago, one of the main themes of our annual conference was geographies of human rights. We also have a specialty group that relates to this issue. So the goal for the AAG is that we want these sessions and conversations to continue, but we also want to elevate these ongoing conversations. The goal would be to build on and complement past and newer efforts and unify our voices around these issues. Okay, so here I would like to start a conversation today with this community about the academic practices around geospatial data versus the private practices around geospatial data and the convergence that we're starting to see between the two worlds, academic and private practice. So just for the sake of bringing back good memories, this photo was taken last year during the AAG UCGIS summer school held at UIUC. We were not social distancing at the time. It's actually kind of weird to see photos now when everyone's close together. But so you see me present next to Jongwon Kim, who is still involved in a project that looks at solutions for sharing confidential geospatial data, which relates to ethics. And this presentation today further builds on those conversations we had at the time. So just a bit of background in terms of ethics in academia. If you have been part of an IRB, which I just heard Song Gao mention his IRB application. If you've been part of IRB applications at your college or university, you may have heard of these terms before: the National Research Act, the Belmont Report, the Common Rule, HIPAA, all these words. They're words mostly used in academia for protecting human subjects in research and protecting their confidentiality, for protecting their data records that are being collected by researchers. These, as you can see, are decisions at the national scale that were taken many years ago, in the 70s and through the 90s. More recently, though, because of the acceleration of how much data is being collected and produced, there started to be a discussion in academics about reproducibility of scientific research, a new wave of conversation around being able to reproduce scientific research. The method sharing is not only the only thing that's important to sharing journal articles, but also the raw data is important to share. And the GSI is very aware of that and trying to provide platforms to realize that. In 2003, the NIH started their data sharing policy, basically urging researchers to make sure that their data is shared so that other researchers can reproduce their research and build on their research. Then NSF followed along in 2011. If you've heard of data management plans, they basically are a 2-page document that outline how you're going to manage your data, but mostly a promise to NSF that you will make your data available to other researchers and how. The White House open data policy started since 2013, which has very similar goals of open data, data sharing, etc. Now, recent data sharing practices in academia, these are 2 studies that looked at data management plans from NSF-funded research. And one thing that I want to show you is this graph you see at the bottom, is whether these data management plans mention private data. Private, not from private companies, but private meaning confidential data. And as you can see, over 70% say they are dealing with confidential data. However, sharing data that is private is not necessarily allowed. But more and more researchers are having to deal with that dilemma of, I'm supposed to share my data with our researchers, but my data is confidential. What do I do? In the current environment, confidential data are only available to the research community after lengthy and complicated processes, or not at all, actually. And methods to protect the data from data breach are negotiating new data use agreements or de-identifying the data, geomasking, aggregating data, which are not great for reproducing research. Aggregating data is not great for that. Now, a brief conversation about data collection and sharing practices in the private sector. So you're all aware that collection of data is all around you and daily and is automated. Private companies are automatically collecting data about you, about your environment. Data sharing practices are based on corporate values. They're not based on an act or academic values. And corporations now conduct research on human subjects unregulated by the National Research Act, which the federal government is under. So you see a convergence of data being collected by the private sector under conditions, under principles that are not shared by academia. And so these data are very useful for academic research. However, the data collection practices and their data sharing practices don't necessarily align with those in academia. So there is a convergence between the data collection and the data use between academic and private institutions, but their set of moral principles or ethics and the bodies of oversights do not align. So we are in very murky territory right now. I wanted to reiterate the GSI goals. So this is a slide that comes from the strategic plan for the GSI. And you see that the third bullet point is the ethical and open geospatial software to promote a culture of ethical and open geospatial software driven by diverse communities. And so I want to start this conversation among the people on this in this meeting, because you are the community of the Geospatial Software Institute. And these ethical goals or moral principles, the shared moral principles, will very much be defined by the collection of ideas that this community has. So this is finally a call to join or spearhead activities on geoethics. AAG is, of course, interested to have more activities on geoethics, but there are more and more discussions around that. And we need all of your ideas, voices, and concerns to be brought up during these activities. A few examples of past activities the AAG did. We did a summer series on questions of geoethics and human rights, highlighted by COVID-19 conditions. Actually, a few people on this call have participated in this series. And then last week, we did a participatory forum with a few members. Jungwon Kim was among them, Ranu Basu, Libby Lundstrom, Sarah Koopman. So we want to further develop our ties with other organizations that are thinking about these issues, like the AAAS Science and Human Rights Coalition. And so this participatory forum came from that. The four moderators you see here, and also Cheryl Beach, she was also a moderator, just moderated questions around privacy issues. You will see they will publish the summary of the discussion they had during that participatory forum in the AG newsletter later on. Upcoming activities are the Science, Technology, and Human Rights Conference, which is coming very soon, October 22nd, but I think you can still register for it, and the AAG will have a workshop on ethics there. And if you're interested to create a session or a panel at the AAG Seattle, please feel free to do so. So I hope this sparked enough thoughts in everyone's minds, and that's it for my end. Thank you for listening to me.
Thanks, Colleen. It's a very informative presentation. So questions for Colleen?
So I see a question.
Chat.
Our general understanding of research with human subjects is confined to qualitative research. How do you see these considerations extending to quantitative research? I think actually, so research with human subjects is also is part of the quantitative research projects. Whenever geospatial information is being collected about anybody, which most geographers do, we need to go through IRB processes. Geospatial data is part of HIPAA data. So it is data that is confidential, that needs to be protected. So I think most research now beyond geography is interested in the geospatial information of people. And so these, the National Research Act is no longer just concerned with qualitative research.
Okay. This is Danny Block. Could I jump in?
Sure.
Try and answer that a little bit. So I'm the chair of our campus IRB at Chicago State. And yeah, I would say that while we are often, well, certain kinds of qualitative research like focus groups get a lot of scrutiny because it's sort of the more personal information you have, the higher risk of loss of confidentiality. It isn't at all a quantitative versus a qualitative thing. And there are new, I think within the context of what we're looking at, you know, this sort of big data sets and such that we're looking at, it adds a lot of new risks, especially with anything that would be video, but also with location, which, you know, people's addresses are where they live in general is something that could reveal who they are and is considered in general a piece of private information that takes away their anonymity. Also, if you're using multiple data sources and comparing them to sort of further focus in on who people are, you can actually identify people that would not have been able to be identified through just one data source. So like an example is some hospitals here in Chicago were comparing their records across hospitals. To sort of, one of the reasons was to track people who were going to different hospitals, and they had to be very careful with maintaining confidentiality within that context. So while openness is also a great goal and a part of part of beneficence, the good, the value of research to society, which is important in IRB. These kinds of techniques do create new issues for IRB that go, or for privacy especially, that go beyond what would have been true about just looking at smaller data sets and single data sets.
Excellent point. Excellent point. So,
Yes.
Colleen, there are a couple of comments also in the chat. I don't know if you had but one I picked up on was like, in terms of comparing confidentiality with reproducibility. So they are kind of conflicting. I think Shun had a question right there and say, and the question follow-up was, are there some potential resolutions or at least approaches we can take?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So this conflict between confidentiality and reproducibility is a very new thing. You know, 20 or 30 years ago, we weren't able to collect that granular amount, that much granular data about individuals at such a large scale. But now that we are, you're right, confidentiality and reproducibility are kind of conflicting with one another. You want to be able to reproduce someone else's research, but if it's based on a confidential data set, how do you reproduce that research? The solutions that are out there are secure servers, right, where a researcher is asking for access to a confidential data set, which means they probably need to do IRB training as well. They need to understand the data use agreement of that data. And then if they are granted access, they can access that data on a secure server. These are really lengthy processes. So if you're thinking in terms of reviewing a journal article that is based on a confidential data set, that may be not a great solution if you have to go through IRB training and the data use agreement before being able to actually reproduce some research. The solutions out there are not that plentiful right now. And actually, the private sector offering so much data sources to the academic world that are not attached to data use agreements as stringent than in the academic world, I think, at least from my observation, provides some way for academics to still analyze big data without having through data use agreement scrutiny. But the solutions are limited. Actually, Jung-Hwan Kim, the person who was in that slide, they're working on a solution that's called the Geospatial Virtual Data Enclave, which would allow researchers to connect to secure server, access data to be able to reproduce or build on research.
Okay, I think there are a lot of questions and a lot of comments. I think this is as Colleen, you were intending, at least sparked a conversation, and I don't think this needs to be the end of the conversation. But of course, keeping in mind the time, so we'll move on to the next presentation. And I guess people can feel free to reach out to Colleen, to reach out through our list servers as well, among yourself, so you can have a discussion on this. But thank you, Colleen.
Yeah, no problem.
Yep. So last but not least, I guess Xiaohua would do a quick presentation on the libraries. It's going to be a lightning talk. So Xiaohua, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Xiaohua. So I'm postdoc working at the Cybergis library. So I'll give a brief, short introduction to our Cybergis library. So there are several challenges to conduct reproducible geospatial research, including data intensive, computational intensive, and collaboration intensive. So we'll develop a open source stack-based geospatial libraries and using open geospatial technologies. So we just want to tackle the diversity version issues for Python-based libraries and want to get the maximal coverage of different spatial libraries. So we're building our Cybergis libraries. So first testing the spatial library and then find the maximal spatial dependency of libraries for different spatial libraries and installing and testing, developing, and then running our Cybergis library. So there are.
Xiaohua, you are going way too fast for maybe people to even look at the slide. So maybe you can slow down a little bit. That's okay.
Sure, cause the time is.
Yeah, that's okay.
Short.
I think you can take your time there. So
yeah,
that's okay. Yeah.
Thank you. So there are several classes of Python-based libraries. So there are utility libraries, geospatial data processing libraries, and spatial analysis libraries, and geovisual analytics library, and the spatial simulation libraries, and geospatial applications. So the utility library just supports operations for reading the tables and the time series files, and then conduct scientific computing for linear algorithm integration, interpolation, machine learning libraries. With these basic libraries to conduct the basic computational study, including Matplotlib, Pandas, scikit, learn. And also we should support the geospatial data processing libraries, like import or export geospatial data files, including vectors, raster, network files, including shapefile, JSON file, GeoPackages, like that. Also support reprojection, including the WGS 84, and also other projections. And we also support various spatial analysis libraries, including the building spatial index, spatial algorithm, spatial optimization operations, and the spatial interpolation, and spatial statistics, and raster analysis. So I just show several of the library, not cover all the library, and later I'll show a Google link that covers all the library list and also all the versions of Python-based libraries. And also we support creating maps, charts, tables, large scale data set visualization files, and the visualization graphic and different statistical data visualization results. And also we have an agent-based modeling framework, and this can modeling and simulation of urban land use. Also, we support a public transportation analytics called Urban Access that can conduct spatial accessibility using the public transportation dataset. And also in our geospatial applications, we support hardware share. Cybergis supported the portal or new kernel that can conduct different geospatial applications. And we also support a Python version-based QGIS, GraphGIS, even in ArcGIS Python that people support. Research can conduct their study. And also, if you want, this library didn't cover all your wanted library, and you can install your library yourself. For example, there are 3 kernels: the hardware share Python, and the default Python is Python 3.7, and then GeoAI Python is the 3rd kernel that can conduct the deep learning research. So in the default kernel, you can use the terminal or Jupyter Notebook to install your library, or we recommend using the content install first, and then you can use the pip install. Here is the snapshot, and we can, in our default kernel, can install the touch or different libraries. And here, if you also, you can install different library in different kernel. So just use conda operator, then to conda activate GOAI kernel, and then to install to write the library name and specify the version. And then you can install that version. So if you want to install a new kernel, for example, we can call this new kernel QGS3, and then activate that kernel, and then install you want libraries, and then this kernel will show in your own account, and you can use that kernel in the future. We also support CPU-based deep learning with Cybergis. There are two technical or two rule lines. The first one is about using the TensorFlow and the Keras. But I want to mention that our cluster also just support a new AVX install. So I collect all the TensorFlow with new AVX links in this document. And then later I can show that. And also we support the touch and the fast AI to conduct deep learning using the geospatial dataset. And here I show two links about our research. So first one is we conduct COVID-19 spatial accessibility using our Cybergis, also using the Cybergis libraries. So here's a GitHub link, and you can reproduce all this study using our Cybergis Jupyter. And then another is the Cybergis Jupyter notebook. Here shows some examples, the easy one, and familiar with the Python-based geospatial libraries. And later I can show a easy demo. Here our finding, and thank you. And later I can show a quick show. Sorry for the time.
No, that's
so
okay.
In our Cybergis Center, you can click in our Cybergis Jupyter and then go to the Cybergis Jupyter, and then they will ask you to register account. When you have an account, and then you can create your project folder. Now here is a project folder like this one. And if you want to conduct mobility, special mobility analytics, and you can import the libraries and read the data set, and also build the index, and then show the maps, or show show different colors or different maps like that. And then here's another one. And this is a link for people if you want to conduct deep learning based geospatial study. So here's a link. So you can first install the right version of TensorFlow. If you want installing the default kernel like Python 3.7, and then install the right TensorFlow libraries. And then later here's to show the touch versions matches the touch vision and also fast AI, and then you can conduct the geospatial research. And here's the link, the library list. Here the list all the library names, also the versions and short descriptions. And here you can.
Yeah, so I guess we will share this kind of an information out there. So I think Xiaohua is, Xiaohua, like these things are in your presentation, right?
Yeah. Yeah, here's the.
Okay, so Xiaohua, maybe I'll interrupt you here because we are kind of over time there. But I think I want to get some points out here in terms of the library. You know who to reach. Xiaohua is kind of the person here. The main thing I guess Xiaohua is showing here is in the Cybergis platform, Cybergis X platform that I showed last week, we had a quick demo of how to register and how to use this. So once you get into the Jupyter Hub environment on Cybergis X, what makes us unique is we have these categories of libraries. Xiaohua went ahead and showed a list of these things that we have. So various kinds of classes of libraries that are all pre-installed. So you don't have to do the installation, and we have different versions of the kernels, which Shawa was showing, in terms of trying to match different needs and match kind of dependencies, handle dependencies and challenges associated with it. So the great thing you have to do, so people who have done GDAL install from source and things like that know that it's not easy, and it can be very challenging, and it can be a potential deal breaker for many people. So what we have in the environment is all these things which are pre-installed, which are available to you, and it can be used. Now, Shawa also showed a way for you to install things. So if you have libraries which you uniquely need, which are not in the environment, what we would recommend is you install it, try to use it, and then contact us through the form that which I shared with you, that if you go to the cybergisx.org, you will find like submit an issue, and you can submit an issue saying, hey, we need this library for doing this X project, and with a brief description on how you did it. So it would be helpful rather than just sending us the link. Also saying in which version, and if you know how to use the commands. If you don't, we are still available to help you in order to install the package. We will work with you in order to figure this out. So you don't have to be a Python expert like Xiaohua is in order to do all these things. So if you don't know, please do not fear and say, hey, this is too much information. Xiaohua did present a lot of information in a very short talk. So I think the key point here I want to make is we have a lot of libraries which are pre-installed, which you can use them, and Shawa will have a list which we can share. The other thing, if you need new libraries, you have two paths. If you are technically capable, you can do that by yourself and tell us how to bake it into our images so it's available to everyone. Or if you're not technically savvy in that sense, you can still contact us and say, I need this kind of library to do my work, and we will work with you. So that's the point I want to get across here.
Thank you.
So questions?
So I had a quick comment and a question, Anand, if I could take a few minutes.
Sure.
And I know it's past the noon hour in the Central Time. I thought three very wonderful presentations, and somehow they're all connected to each other. I'll have a comment and / question, maybe starting with Colleen's, because that is a connector between the two presentations, the starting one and the ending one. I was wondering whether AAG in the strategic plan you shared has anything planned to work with the community to come up with sort of the notion of code of conduct for the community to practice. Because this, to me, this group represents a pretty active and potentially productive group to contribute and also to benefit from AAG's coordination. And along that code of conduct, is AAG also interested to figure out what might be technical capabilities and services AAG could help drive the community toward or work with the community to establish? Colleen, you're muted.
These are good questions, Shawan. I can talk about that with our executive director, Gary Langham. AAG has a code of ethics, right? But this applies to our members, AAG members, not necessarily, in terms of the Geospatial Software Institute, that would become a broader community than the AAG, right? So yeah, I think going through a process of building these principles, what are going to be the principles of the GSI in terms of ethics, I think would be a really good thing to do. Not necessarily copying from from other associations, but tailoring them to what the GSI is going to represent and what their goals and the vision is.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a pretty big topic. I enjoyed your sharing as well as the other two presentations. We could follow up, but I want to ask this question because given what I understood from your presentation as part of AAG strategic plan, I think these are important implications worth considering further.
Yeah, I agree. And we can support that effort. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thanks again.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Ruby, yeah, your voice never came through easily today, Ruby. I saw you were attempting to talk multiple times. You might type, or you could send any notes to the listserv. Back to you, Anand.
Okay. Thank you. I guess, yeah, thank you for the presentations, all three, Songao, Colleen, and Xiaohua. I think this was a good discussion. Of course, there are things, I'm sure that you still have questions. So I think feel free to use the communication channel that we have set up among the fellows. So the mailing list that is there, which I'm sending out emails to, that has like all the fellows as well as few of us at Illinois. If you want to get added, if there are other people who want to get added, we could add them, like who are working with the fellows. I think that's also possible. Then we can create a bigger list. So please feel free to use that to share. So next week would be the last in our series, in this first series of workshops, the 4 workshops. We are planning to have 2 discussions. One, I think Peter and Joe will be presenting their work on reproducibility and replicability. And the second would be, we'll have a discussion on, or a presentation on, the visual analytics and geospatial visual analytics using Cybergis, which Suhan would be leading. There were some questions about like other topics which we want to introduce. Maybe people want to get an introduction to Python. I'm completely open to that. We could set up some like community events for people who are not very well versed with Python, who want to get to know Cybergis better. Let me think about it. Maybe we'll set up like kind of this 1 or 2 sessions to do that, or maybe even have office hours where people who are interested in that kind of topic can come and work with the expert from the GSI project, so conceptualization project. So those are good comments that I'll take into account and come up with a plan. So, but if you have any suggestions, please do let us know. Yeah, Shawan, do you have any comments or final comments before we wrap up?
No, yeah, thanks very much again for all the presenters and discussants, and also for all of your participation today. Seems that we're making solid progress, getting folks' interest and inputs registered. So we'll digest as fast as we can, and at the same time, please reach out to us and connect with each other to suggest other topics or other activities our group should pursue. We would really appreciate your feedback and input.
Thank you, Shawan. So I think that's all I have. So we'll, unless anyone has any more comments, we'll adjourn and meet back next week. I'll stay for a few more minutes if someone has any questions.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, folks.
So Anna,
Yes.
I do have a short question about what is the timeline looks like, because I saw, like your group has a spatial accessibility notebook. I think that's great. I wonder how about other fellows, as the time goes on, we may have, I do have plans. So in the proposal, like post some of the fundamental notebooks there.
Yeah.
And I wonder how to engage that process.
I think that's a very good point. Yeah, I think we are building a mechanism for fellows to submit their notebooks. I think it should be available in a few weeks. So you could make the things available, but if not, also if you have something which you need to urgently share with the community, you're welcome to send us. So that's something we can work with you on a case by case basis as well. So so in short answer is we really do want to make your notebooks and your contributions shared as well. So it's on the platform like we had the notebooks, also in the app environment like Drew shared last week. So if you have anything in those kinds of categories, we're happy to have those.
Yeah, thank you. I just I think that's maybe something also you can briefly mention in next workshop.
We'll do that. I think that's a very good point. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Sue.
Short answer soon is we're ready to engage anytime, but we do recognize the diversity of the fellows and their teams. The fellows are not necessarily on the same page, especially on the technical competency. I personally believe you are ready anytime, as well as we are.
Yeah, punishment. So, about the code. Yeah,
we don't want to necessarily impose sort of timetable against any fellows, but we certainly want to be supportive of your goals to the best degree we can. And also this type of engagement, I would say, has potential valuable impact your research program might want to leverage. So if from that point of view, you feel like it's a bit more urgent to get things going on the road, let us know. We'd be happy to work with you.
Yeah, I think it's not urgent. I just because Professor Xun Shi also talked with me, and also I think just now Jingwu, I think seems that we do share some of those maybe common interests. I think that maybe have some common working environment. That can.
Well, that's actually a very nice motivation because for you folks to share your technical knowledge, one of the most effective ways is to put together a notebook for others to look at. And then we have this common platform for you to use, freely, and also have technical consultation from our side you could take advantage of. So that's exactly what I think this program is all about to a large degree. So feel free to move ahead and let us know how we could be of help.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks for your time. And I think Sue, we can also reach out afterwards, maybe individually talk about some of the things. We talk about how to incorporate different types of mobility data. Like we have the open source mobile phone data, you may have maybe Twitter data or some other information to work with.
What I was going to say. So I will email you.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you guys. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We can communicate with Anna, because you mentioned that we have a channel that we can communicate with others.
Yes, we have the Geospatial Fellows list. Sue, I don't know if you are on that, but I can add you. But all the fellows are there. So it goes to all the fellows. I think Shaw and myself are there, and I think Becky is also there. So.
Okay, sounds cool.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Bye-bye, guys. Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
You should stop the recording.
Yes, of course. Where do I have?
Maybe I could do it too.